Okay, so it's Thursday, June 29th, and I'm here with Michael for agent enrichment. You all selected your top, well, really, you just ranked them all. You had choices of 5, but it was nice that you all pretty much agreed on what to cover. So the theme is going to be how to become the best listing agent, defend your commission, and negotiate better. And we'll start off with want to become the best listing agent in your area, practice. And this is a long one, so I'll warn you on that one. This one is, there's basically 10 pages in the packet. Yeah, and this one takes up 5. So this is a long one, but it's very detailed, which I think is helpful. And so that's the idea. And so I'll periodically pause, ask if you have any questions or comments, but at the same time, especially since it's just you and me, just feel free to speak up and interrupt. You're not really interrupting. It's just you and me, so we can just have a casual conversation.
Oh yeah, I've got lots of things to say about listings.
Okay, so let's see if it's covered here, but then if it isn't and you have questions, then this is what we're here for. You know, we've got the hour to cover this. And then I know that both Jen and Haley are going to watch the recording too. So sometimes your questions and comments can help them out too. Okay, so this article was written by Carl Medford, June 14th. These are all from Inman News, and they're all very recent. And so he writes, what separates the best listing agents from the rest? Why does it seem that some realtors score listing after listing while others get the dreaded rejection call? Some would insist it is an innate ability, reasoning the good listing agents were born with a special something I do not have. Therefore, there is no way I can achieve what they do. Pure and simple, that is bunk. Which when I saw that, I was like, okay, that's an interesting one. We don't use that word here, but that might be a new one I start using. I like it.
Sounds like a Midwest
Bunk.
word.
Oh, is that where it comes from? I wonder if that's where he's from. I've just never heard it used here, but I like it because you might say something else instead. That's less appropriate. Others might assume that winning agents either offer more services or cut their commissions. While there is a modicum of truth there, these are frequently not the determining factors either. First, let's begin with what skills are not required during an appointment. And the first is bragging about past successes. Ironically, you're in the room with the seller because they believe you can sell their home. In most cases, they will be meeting with other agents they also believe can sell their property. This means you do not have to tout your successes. If they ask about your track record, you can provide a quick summary, but that will never be the intrinsic focus of the appointment. The truth is, the sellers are not so much concerned with what you have done in the past. They are far more interested in what you can do for them in the future. And I do think that that's true. I think it can be helpful to have a page in your marketing plan or listing presentation or CMA, whatever you want to call it, right? Because it's kind of any of those 3 things that does maybe talk about your past listings and sales when you have a record, right? So then that way, if you leave and they are kind of questioning or whatever, then at least they can go back and review it. But we don't necessarily need to be talking about it a lot. The other is extensive talking. In reality, the less speaking you do, the better. You want to encourage the sellers to provide most of the dialogue. If you speak too much, the seller will tune out and then start mentally counting down the moments until you are out the front door. High pressure tactics. You will not need to strong arm a seller to work with you. In fact, if you try, you will quickly build up resentment that will either eliminate you from their options or, should they choose you, cause problems of resentment down the road. So I printed these double-sided just to save paper. So listing agents who consistently win have developed the following 10 abilities. And this is why this is a long section, because we'll go through all 10. Good. Number 1, the ability to listen. While most lists of skills required by a listing agent start with communication, I believe it is far more important to know how to listen. Many agents assume that communication means opening their listing presentation and downloading information. In fact, the majority of talking in any listing appointment needs to be done by the sellers. Smart listing agents will pull out a pad of paper, or I would say, or a tablet or some form of taking notes, right? Ask questions, listen carefully, and either write or type down your responses that will later provide the foundation for meaningful discourse. You know, there's the old saying of we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And this is just a reminder that this is when it's definitely best. Number 2 is the ability to empathize. The definition of empathy is the ability to understand another person's thoughts and feelings in a situation from their point of view rather than your own. In other words, by carefully listening to the sellers, the listing agent can develop an understanding of the motivations behind the obvious need to sell. It's impossible to empathize without taking the time to carefully listen. Often what is not being said is more important than the actual words uttered by the client. And that's definitely true. Or also it's not really mentioned in here, but body language, facial expressions, just all of that can help you get to know a person, their real motivations, really what they're looking for, what they need, all that sort of stuff. Number 3, the ability to detect needs. By empathizing, a listing agent can determine the underlying motivations and adapt accordingly. Most listing agents will wait for the seller to stop talking so they can start their listing presentation. Once they begin, they're more concerned with downloading information than they are with determining the seller's needs. In contrast, if you totally understand the seller's needs and motivations and can address them directly, you might not even need to go into your presentation at all. Simply affirming that you have heard them and can provide a simple, meaningful response that meets those needs may be all that is required to secure the listing. And I have found that true. I wouldn't ever just totally skip over your marketing plan, because I think that it would still be good to make sure they understand what you're going to be doing or what RE/MAX is going to be doing to sell their home. But then at least maybe you're not going over it in as much detail, right? Like for me, when I run into that, I just kind of flip through the pages really quick and talk about the highlights. But so then at least that way, when I know I leave, I know that they understand what I'm going to do. Number 4, the ability to detect personality types. Are you sitting across the table from a D, I, S, or C? In the world of Gary Smalley, a lion, otter, golden retriever, or a beaver. Every personality type has different needs and responds in a different way. If you go into an appointment with a lion acting like a beaver, your chances of success will be very small. In contrast, if you act like a lion to a golden retriever, there will not be a follow-up appointment. It is important to understand the differences between the various types of personalities you will encounter and how to match and mirror their characteristics.
What were the DISC?
Let's see, it was, actually, we just went over this in great detail in Denver. When I was there at RE/MAX World Headquarters, because we were using the DISC as it applies to recruiting. I know that D is driver, I is influencer, I think.
I've heard.
S is supportive, and C was C. I was surprised that they didn't include that in the article. So it would be good to cover that. Hopefully I can pull up these notes really quick. I'm not seeing it here, but let's see, I had to take the personality profile. That would definitely give the definitions. Where did I file that at?
Yeah, I definitely can detect personality types. I don't even know what they are.
Oh, okay.
But that's what you get when you work with computers for 20 years.
Gotta try that. Oh, yes. Yeah.
I used to be really good at it. It's in there. I know it is.
I'm not finding it very easily. So I guess what I will do is find that, because I know I have it. It's just kind of hard to find it on the fly like this.
Yeah.
I'm trying to stay off the computer since I've got that going. But I'll pull it up, and then like we've got our office meeting, like next week is the holiday week. So we don't have any office events next week, but we have it the following Tuesday. And I'll definitely be sure to have it then. And I'll have some materials about it. But it's basically about what type of person are you or is the customer, right? And are they more of a controlling person and need to be in the driver's seat? Or are they more of a sit back looking for you to be more of the driver? I mean, those are kind of the two extreme opposites. But the more that we can adapt to the style and be flexible, more likely we'll find more success. Because we'll just be able to work with more people. Okay, number 5 is the ability to effectively communicate. And I think you all know that this is what I really stand by. I think it is one of the most important things too. The underlying premise of communication is that it's a two-way dialogue designed to meet the needs of both parties. Effective communication flows from knowing who is on the other side of the table and then adapting your communication to fit their preferences. This will never happen if you do not first take the time and effort to get them talking while you actively listen. So again, that involves the listening and then adapting your communication to fit their personality and style and everything. Number 6, the ability to respond with scripts. Just about everything we say and do in life is scripted. The problem is we're usually unaware of how prevalent scripts actually are. As an example, when a child acts out, we automatically respond, usually with the same dialogue we have used 100 times before. The question is not, do we use scripts? It is, are the scripts we use actually effective? Call any customer service or sales organization, and you will immediately be confronted with scripts. These large organizations know the value of scripts and train their team members to use them in every situation. Standardized scripts maintain effective customer service and prevent employees from going off the rails or responding incorrectly. Muscle memory is what happens when we do the same maneuver over and over again. There is no need to think about a response, it automatically happens. If you've ever visited London, you will have seen signs painted on the road at crosswalks stating "look right." City officials know that most of us, when approaching a street to cross, instinctively look left for approaching vehicles. Since drivers in the UK drive on the other side of the road, a script is provided to warn us not to respond automatically. Signs began to appear after numerous foreign visitors were hit by cars coming from the wrong direction. Effective realtors understand the need for scripts. They not only look for effective scripts, they practice them until they are second nature. When specific questions arise, they can respond automatically without thinking. And so as a reminder, the RE/MAX Momentum program has a wide variety of scripts in all the chapters. If you're ever looking for one, like I know a couple of you asked me for door knocking scripts, I'll be happy to go through them and compile them on a one page for you all. But the idea of the script is it at least gives you an idea of what you can say or what questions or things you should address, right? And then you can put it in your own words. But like for sure, for open houses, I have a pretty standard script that I'm going to try to follow and ask the same questions of everyone. But of course, depending on how they answer, then it's like, I think we're talking about, there's kind of a flow chart of, okay, which way you're going to go and what you're going to do next, right? And sometimes you aren't able to follow it, but the idea is still by at least having a script or a plan for what you're going to do, you're more likely to at least get the important questions answered and get the information you need to know, okay, can I help this person or not? And if so, what can I do? All that sort of stuff. At an open house, a lot of it is just figuring out, okay, how do they find you and ruling out, can you help them or not? So that's just one example. Number 7 is the ability to demonstrate market knowledge. Average agents know if the market is hot or cold, but do not have extensive knowledge of market intricacies at their fingertips. In contrast, effective agents are more like local economists who know the local stats, national trends, and can explain in detail what is happening in the current market and where they believe the market will be in the future. And so again, that isn't, we cover stats every month. So those are just some general talking points for you. But then when you're doing a CMA for someone, you'll definitely want to dig deeper, like we've talked about using the InfoSpark reports or whatever, and provide more detailed statistics for their zip code, city, area, or whatever. Because the more you can talk about that, just in general, most people will then think you're more knowledgeable, which is a big plus. Number 8, ability to demonstrate integrity. A number of years ago, I began working with a couple looking to move up. The husband was a dominant C-suite executive in a local tech company who, as I quickly discovered, was not interested in his wife's opinion. Tension began to build as we quickly discovered they both had totally different ideas of the type of house they were looking to buy. I finally sat them down and as gently as I could explained that I could sell them a house now, but if things continued, would likely be selling it for them in a year or so to settle a divorce. I then advised them to stop the search and plug into counseling. And I'm assuming he didn't just talk to them like that.
Right.
Yeah, he must have found a great way to say that. But startled that I would put their needs ahead of both a listing and a purchase, they took my advice. And once they had worked on their relationship, called me back to help them achieve their goals. I subsequently did a total of 5 transactions with them, totaling millions of dollars. And I bet he probably also got some referrals too. Yeah. So it's always kind of thinking long game, what is really best for our clients. As realtors, we have a fiduciary responsibility to put the needs of our clients before our own. This means that we tell the truth, even if it's not in our best interest to do so. Prospective sellers can quickly tell if you are sincere or not, and whether integrity is just a tagline or an integral part of your character. Number 9 is the ability to demonstrate skills. Most people watching a chess master play multiple opponents at the same time while blindfolded would ascribe them godlike abilities. In reality, however, what they're actually seeing is behavior honed after thousands of hours of dedicated practice, countless pages studied in chess books, and a brain that has actually been changed due to immersion in the craft. It is no secret that a weightlifter builds muscle after repeated lifts, enabling them to increase the weight they can hoist. Runners' hearts actually grow larger, enabling them to process more blood and increase the amount of oxygen flowing through their bodies. Likewise, after extensive practice, the brains of chess players change over time to allow for higher levels of performance. The same principle applies in business. Whereas a rookie agent might struggle to come up with a response to any given situation in a listing appointment, the agent with years of engagement in real estate and thousands of hours of practice exudes the correct responses automatically. Skills simply flow. Market data and statistics are provided with seemingly no effort. Their brains have, in fact, been rewired through their conscious efforts to excel. Then number 10, the ability to negotiate. At the end of the day, real estate is all about negotiation. Since the purchase or sale of a home is typically the largest financial investment many make in their lifetimes, it's important to successfully negotiate the best deal for all parties concerned. Negotiation is not an inherent skill, regardless of what some may believe. It comes from study and practice, and while easy to learn, is often ignored by agents who assume they already have the innate skills to effectively negotiate. Since every listing appointment requires negotiation to some degree, those who have taken the time to actually develop their skills will come out ahead. So having defined the 10 abilities required to succeed in listing appointments, how then does someone actually develop these abilities until they are second nature? How does a Michelin-starred chef know intrinsically what will work and what will not? It comes down to practice. And then that's what we'll cover next. I wanted to go back to the scripts though, because wanted to just remind everyone that in the Remax momentum stuff, in addition to having scripts for everything, open houses, door knocking, there's also quite a few for working with sellers, including how to handle objections. But what I will say, like I've told all of you before, is I think some of the lingo in the chapters is, I don't know, it's not from this part of the US. And I think it's also a little dated now. The good news is, and it was just confirmed for me when I was in Denver, that they are updating those chapters.
Okay.
So they are trying to make it more like today. But still, they have some good scripts in there. So if you guys ever have questions, we can schedule a brief Zoom, go over the scripts and help customize them for you so they sound more like you. You know, I don't want you to feel stuck with those because I know they sound kind of funky. So I'm willing to help you work on it yourself. Okay, so as far as practice goes, 2 critical components must be understood to set you apart from the rest of the pack. Number 1, more practice than the rest. It is easy to look at truly great performers and conclude that they were born with some special skill that sets them apart from the rest of the world. In reality, studies have shown this is simply not true. So what made the following so successful? Jerry Rice from football, Bobby Fischer with chess, I don't know, Itzhak Perlman, a violinist, Michael Phelps, the swimmer, and Tiger Woods with golf. One simple thing, they all practice more than their competition. Not only did they put in more hours than the rest, but those hours were also intensely focused. Phelps knew it would take 2 days to get back into his rhythm after taking a day off, so he opted to practice every day for years. His opponents, in contrast, took at least 1 day off a week. This meant that Michael gained at least 2 days more of practice a week than his competitors. When you add up those extra days over years, his lead became insurmountable. And I thought this was kind of interesting. Like, I hadn't really thought about it this way, right? But when you really look at the numbers, it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Maybe that's how we really did it, right? Tiger Woods, starting at the age of 2, ended up practicing 13 hours a day, along with extensive cardio and weight regimens, completely unheard of in the world of golf, winning more than 200 tournaments worldwide and becoming one of the most famous athletes in the world. The results speak for themselves. And I guess I'll point out, there were paragraphs about these other folks that were listed, but I didn't want to get into all of that and just have this go way too long. So I kind of cut them out and covered the 2 that at least I was most familiar with and that were most impactful. The constant in all of these individuals is not any latent talent, but flowing from their passion and dedication to the craft, they all literally out-practice their competition. The implications for realtors should be obvious. If you want to be better than the rest, practice is the pathway to success. In reality, it should not be difficult to practice enough to get ahead. While this might sound crass, we all know it's true. Most realtors, at least the ones I know, do not spend any amount of time consistently working on their craft. In fact, as I've discovered over my years in the business, most agents will spend hours doing anything except what they should be doing to succeed. And we kind of chuckle, but that's what I have found too. And I know I have to watch myself. It's very easy to just get caught up in some little busy work and the details when, as agents, we really should be reviewing our scripts. So we're ready to go when we get a phone call or when we have a listing appointment, all that sort of stuff, or even just making the calls and doing the lead generation, which really leads to business. It was just said, where was it? I'm trying to think where it was, but within the last few days, just this morning, actually, there was a RE/MAX owners meeting, and they were talking about how, and I think it's true here too, but across the US, owners are finding agents that are just kind of sitting back, waiting for their phone to ring, maybe not going out, holding open houses and door knocking. Their business is definitely going down. It's those that are being proactive, getting out, knocking on doors, holding open houses that are finding business. Because like we've talked before, business is there. There's less of it, and it just might take more time to find or harder to get people to commit or to close and everything, but there's still business out there. We just got to maybe be more proactive. Okay, so number 2 regarding practice is better practice than the rest. As seen above, it is not only the fact that these champions practiced more than everyone else, how they practiced was also important. Jim Collins in Habits, which is a book he wrote, clarifies excellence requires more than just a lot of practice. It requires the right kind of practice. The natural tendency for humans, professional athletes included, is to fall into a routine once we achieve an adequate level of performance. Michael Phelps did not just keep swimming laps, trying to best his previous times. Knowing that strength was critical, with the help of his coach, he focused on targeted weight training, understanding that his competitive edge would often be in hundredths of a second. He intensely honed in on tiny details such as the position of his hands and then practiced the new techniques until they were second nature. Using an example from Jeff Colvin's book, Talent is Overrated, instead of showing up and mindlessly hitting a bucket of golf balls, a more effective approach would be to hit a ball and then have a coach work with you to fine-tune your swing until you're consistently hitting balls straight and true. Unfortunately, this type of practice can be intensely boring, which is the number one reason most are not willing to pay the price required to achieve success. For realtors who want to be the best at their craft, it means taking the 10 required abilities, practicing more than their competition, and then seeking out a coach to help fine-tune each area of practice until mastery is achieved. The good news is that most of your competitors will not be willing to pay the price required to become the best, which leaves the door wide open for those who truly want to succeed. And I do believe that as well.
Yeah, I think the only time I've ever actually practiced was like right before the listing presentation, like a couple days before. Not good enough, obviously.
Yeah, like
So I need to do it all the time.
well, yeah, what I was going to say is when you don't have a lot of business, it could
Yeah.
be good to just at least like budget time maybe each week to review everything for the listing, because then it's just going to become second nature. And then that way, when you get a phone call or whatever, you're not kind of scrambling, you'll be ready to go and stuff will just come out of your mouth. Yep, for sure. And then, he talks in here about a coach. I'm available to do that, right? Obviously, there are professional coaches out there. They're expensive, but if you want to hire one, that would be great. But if you don't, I am here and available. All you got to do is let me know you want to meet and we can schedule a brief Zoom. And then the other thing too, I know that it's listed on the outline, but I know a lot of agents want to skip over it. So just a reminder for you too, we can totally role play. So like we could go through the whole process of you working with a seller and you asking questions. And it's not even like I need to have answers, but it's just about you asking questions and me saying, okay, yep, that was a good one. Next one, and kind of moving along that way. Or, and again, this isn't realistic, but I could just throw out a bunch of objections and you could get some practice handling them.
Yeah.
And then what usually happens when agents do that is they're like, oh gosh, I didn't like that. Or I might say, oh, that didn't really come out good. So then we can fine tune it, right? And then if you want, you can go maybe reword your script and then we can schedule another time to come back and practice. But like I tell everyone, I would rather be your guinea pig in your practice because this is my job and I enjoy doing it. I don't want you to risk commissions for it. You know what I mean? When you're practicing in front of customers, commissions are up for grabs. So I would rather you practice on me. I'm willing to be the guinea pig. And I think I'm probably going to be nicer too. You know what I mean? We'll just be able to have a conversation about how maybe you can improve it in the future rather than who knows what the customer is going to think, but then maybe you just don't get the listing, right?
Right. Well, they're all super nice to your face.
Yes. Yeah, which I guess is good, but at the same time, it doesn't always make it easy for us to know what we could have done better or whatever too.
Exactly.
But that's where use me for practice, Oh, and then I wanted to mention that this book that's mentioned in here, Jeff Colvin's Talent is Overrated. That's a book that we haven't read yet for book club, and it's actually kind of been on my list. So if you're interested, maybe check it out. Like, I don't mean literally check it out and read it yet, but just like read a description over it or whatever, see if you're interested, because I do think that would be a good book maybe to read this year for book club. Okay, so that is it for the first topic about becoming the best listing agent. We covered the 3 things not to do, the 10 skills that are most important, and then we talked in detail about practice and how we need to practice more than the rest, and then also fine tune that practice to really be focusing on what we need to work on and improve those skills. I guess, do you have any other questions or comments about any of them? Okay. So the next topic is defend your commission, 5 reasons you're worth it. And this is by Daryl Davis, who actually writes for Inman News a lot. And I guess he originally did it a couple of years ago, but he recently updated the article. Have you ever felt like your commission was under attack? Raise your hand if you've heard this one. Why should I list with an agent when I can sell it myself and save the commission? Classic, right? And what I have to say is I don't think that's necessarily true here. I do hear that this is kind of what happens in other parts of the US. I think here what's under attack is our rate. Unfortunately, there are a lot of brokers out there that are just really willing to reduce their commission. And of course, they're reducing their services, but that isn't what the sellers think, So I kind of come at this from a little bit different point of view, but this is still really helpful to go over. The challenge for most agents when they get this objection, or I think we can just talk about commission objections in general, right? About rates and everything, is that they stumble through it, trying to answer it with weak justifications. But the real reason why agents struggle with answering this objection is because they aren't really convinced themselves that they can help a seller net more. Think about it. If agents aren't sold on their own value, how on earth can they possibly convince a seller? That's why the most important thing for you to do before you start handling the commission objection is for you to know your value, to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that a seller is much better off hiring you than going it alone as a for sale by owner or hiring a different agent, right? Because like I do truly know that with RE/MAX, they get the most exposure, more exposure than the other big brands here, and definitely more than the discount brokerages, because those discount brokerages aren't even ending up on all the websites that buyers use, you know? And so that's why those pages that are available for us through RE/MAX are important. They're there to help us explain our value. So let's break down just 5 quick reasons why you're worth every penny you charge. And of course, this isn't going to be RE/MAX focused. So that's what's good. This is just in general. Number one, statistically, homes sold by agents sell for more. So this is geared towards FSBOs. These statistics aren't a fluke. They aren't a one-off. They're consistent year after year, whether we're in a buyer's market or a hot seller's market. The most recent NAR profile of home buyer and sellers stated typical FSBO home sold for $217,900 compared to $295 for agent-assisted home sales. Based on those numbers, homeowners certainly net more money in their pocket after they pay the commission. So I think if you were trying to work with a FSBO, you could definitely use this stat.
Yeah, that's almost a third more.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and so that's why it's easy to see that
Yeah.
it could have covered the commission.
no, easily.
And then we'll get into the other stuff too, because there's just a bunch of other things. Obviously, these prices are in a different part of the US.
Yeah. Probably Texas or something.
Yeah. I would think maybe even Texas prices are going up now, but
Yeah.
Number 2, you bring a whole different kind of buyer. And it applies to everyone. Buyers today are more savvy and more educated than they've ever been. If they're working directly with a FSBO, they're there to look for a deal and to save money. Let me ask you something. If you wanted to buy a new couch, would you go to eBay or Ethan Allen? The answer lies in your expectations. A typical eBay buyer is looking for a good deal, usually on used goods, but knows there's a little gamble involved and certainly no quality guarantee. However, the Ethan Allen buyer is looking for quality, an experience they can trust, and a guarantee that their purchase will be safeguarded, and they're fine with paying a little more for those safeguards. The same is true for home buyers. The buyers who are engaged with an agent and are looking at listings want to be sure their interests are covered and someone is negotiating on their behalf and they're willing to pay for that. That's a big reason why homes sold through agents sell for more. And so although this is directed at why agents with the buyer would want a home to be listed so they could also work with the listing agent. In general, this also just kind of applies to a seller choosing a listing agent themselves too, right? Because they talk about value and the difference between that. Number 3, there's a lot more to it than a sign in the yard. Yes, even in a hot seller's market, there's a lot more that goes into the sale of real estate than the sign in the yard or a few dollars to a flat fee service to list a property. If there weren't more to it, why does every state require extensive training and a license to do it? As a licensed and trained agent, you can protect homeowners from miscalculating price, misrepresenting themselves, negotiate win-win offers, especially in multiple offer situations, market homes to ensure the best possible exposure, which increases the potential for above asking price deals, and so much more. And so again, although this is written more for FSBOs, this also applies to us and how we compete with other agents. Providing a professional CMA, helping them price it correctly, representing them perhaps better than another discount agent, right? Like I always provide the example that when they hire us to be their realtor and represent us, it's very easy for them to just look at the concrete things that they receive, right? The written offers and then the negotiating from there. But it really starts from when the sign is placed in the ground and we start receiving phone calls. How are those phone calls answered? Are those buyers directed to financing, or are they just let go? How are conversations with other buyers agents handled? Are they handled professionally in a helpful, cooperative manner or not? There's lots of conversations and things going on behind the scenes that are important. So I think that applies to this part, that there's definitely a lot more to it than a sign in the yard. Number 4, you separate the lookers from the buyers. FSBOs are letting complete strangers into their house without any screening or safety considerations. As a licensed agent, you're like TSA for a homeowner. You're the safest bet in town. To come through one of your listings, buyers are screened, pre-qualified, and recorded. They have the security of knowing who is in their home and why. With our role in that state that is in, that alone is worth your commission. So again, this is for FSBOs. But when you flip it around and you just want to compare yourself as a listing broker to other, like one thing that I always do is, besides showing time following up with the buyer's agents that showed, I also personally follow up with emails, texts, or phone calls. And so the idea is that I am doing more than the other agents to try to gather feedback, find out, okay, why didn't that home work for them, right? And sometimes, like I just got feedback today. The condo was just too small for her. Well, in that case, there isn't anything we can do. But if there's a concern about closing costs or this and that, and sometimes I've been getting that lately, well, then I share that with the seller, and then the seller tells me, even surprisingly, oh, well, since we've been getting this feedback a few times, let's go ahead and offer to help out with closing costs, that sort of stuff. So in addition to when listing with us, we screen the buyers. Also, just by hiring us as a listing agent, we can do a lot more than other average listing agents. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure, because I almost feel like I'm going around in circles. Number 5, you protect them from legal woes. And again, there's the difference between a FSBO, but then there's also the difference between discount brokerages, agents that are just putting a sign in the ground, writing contracts, versus what we can really do for them, right? There's a good reason attorneys don't represent themselves. Ever hear that old adage, when you're in the picture, you can't see the frame? The same is true for FSBOs. They're often downloading contracts from the internet without fully understanding if they're even valid, and certainly don't come with assurances that their best interests are being served. Add to that an opportunity to get overzealous in a multi-offer situation, and a FSBO can really land themselves in legal hot water. I mean, there's fair housing laws, disclosure laws. There's so much to it these days, right? You can find example after example of sellers who inadvertently sold their home to more than one buyer, and not only have to try to legally extract themselves from one or more contract, but find themselves legally responsible for more than one commission. These 5 reasons are truly just the tip of the iceberg of why you're worth your commission. The sooner you lean in and learn all the incredible ways you benefit your clients and become your most skilled at communicating those benefits, the more confident you'll be when facing FSBOs or anyone who asks whether you're worth it. I have 3 powerful words for you. Know your value. In a world where it feels like things are changing faster than the speed of light, people need professionals who will advocate for them, protect their investments, ensure their family's safety, and be a resource for answers in the midst of all the confusion. That's what you do. You're that advocate. Know it, believe it, and then communicate it. So I think going back to legal woes too, I don't know how you would want to present it, but you can talk about the continuing education you've received, how you get updates from your office once a month, all that sort of stuff. And so you're really up to date. I know that there are many agents out there that aren't necessarily up to date. So any questions on any of that? About commissions? It was focused on FSBOs. I tried to make it more applicable to us, just competing with maybe other agents for the listing.
Yeah, I don't think any questions.
Okay, so the last topic, negotiating 10 more words to put on your don't say list. This is by another comment writer for Inman News. In a recent Inman article, I shared 7 words you should never ever say when you're negotiating. Those 7 words are but, can't, hope, if, no or not, should, and try. These words undermine negotiations by making you appear less confident and less effective. Here are 10 additional words to avoid that can sink your deal when you're negotiating. Words that shut down the negotiation process. You have 2 primary goals when you're negotiating. Either persuade both parties to come to an agreement or keep the negotiation going until they do agree. Unfortunately, the 10 words below usually shut down negotiation rather than moving it forward. Always. When you say always, you're implying that something is unchangeable or impossible to negotiate. This can make the other party feel like their needs and desires are not being heard or considered. Instead, try using phrases like in most cases or typically. For example, if you tell your buyers, if you want to avoid paying private mortgage insurance, the lenders always require borrowers to have at least a 20% down payment. While this is usually the case, if the buyer is eligible for down payment assistance, they can often put part or all of the down payment assistance they receive towards their down payment. This in turn allows them to purchase with less than 20% down while also avoiding paying the PMI. Here's how to explain this. Lenders typically require that buyers have at least a 20% down payment to avoid paying private mortgage insurance. One exception, however, is if you qualify for down payment assistance. To see if any down payment assistance programs are available on a property that's currently listed on Zillow.com, visit their site. Okay, I don't know if I talk about Zillow, but within the MLS, there's a little down payment assistance icon for all the listings that qualify for that too. So that's what I would say instead of Zillow. Number 2, for words that shut down the negotiation process, impossible. Using the word impossible can shut down a negotiation before it even begins. It implies that there is no way to reach an agreement and typically ends the negotiation. Moreover, impossible can make you sound like a defeatist who lacks the skill to find an acceptable solution. It can also make the other party feel like their needs or requests are being dismissed without proper consideration. For example, instead of saying it's impossible for us to meet your asking price, you could say, we're concerned about the fact that prices are continuing to drop and that if we accept your price, the appraisal may come in low or that we may not qualify for a larger loan. Do you have the comparable sales to substantiate your price? Yeah, so this would be a buyer's agent talking to a listing agent. Appraisals are a huge issue in a declining market. Savvy agents know how to show the exact rate at a given property. To show the exact rate a given property is declining. Realtor.com has charts that show these numbers for most of the properties listed on their site, or obviously we can pull it from our Northwest MLS. Number 3, never. Never is a word that implies a final decision has been made and there is no room for negotiation or compromise. When you say never, you're shutting down the conversation and limiting the possibilities for a successful outcome. Instead, try using phrases like, let's explore different options, or let's find a solution that works for both parties. For example, instead of saying, we could never close before the end of the month, try saying, let's explore different options for a closing date to see what works best for everyone. And then number 4, the word final. Using the word final in negotiations can lead to an impasse and damage the possibility of a successful outcome. The word final usually signals that one of the parties has made their last offer before terminating the negotiation. Instead, try using phrases like at this point or for now to leave room for further dialogue. For example, instead of saying, this is our final offer, you might say, for now, this seems to be the best the buyers can do in terms of price. Is there some other concession they could make that might motivate you to accept their price? Or I know one thing that I'll say sometimes when I get questions about my sellers and are they firm on price, if that is where they are, then I'll say, yeah, that's where they stand currently or at this time. I am careful because I want to try to leave it open. I want them to know that they could call me next week and maybe they're going to get a different answer. And they may very well, like I've had it happen just recently where that seller reduced $15,000. And then within a couple of days, she's willing to help out with closing costs. I was like, okay. Well, and you talk to her, so you know how she is.
Yeah,
And
I'm surprised actually.
Well,
She's so
I guess
motivated.
well, I think what it shows is that I've been sharing her feedback that we'd been getting on the condo, or with both sellers, I've been sharing all the challenges in getting financing and stuff. And so finally, she's like, this financing is affecting our market value, isn't it? I said, yes, it is. And so I recommended a price reduction, but then she was like, they actually went higher than I recommended. So that's a good thing. They're motivated. Confrontational words that can be confrontational. Number 5, problem. When negotiating, avoid words that imply negativity or blame. Problem is one of those words. Using this word can make the other party defensive and less willing to work towards a solution. Instead, try using phrases like challenge or issue. For example, instead of saying we have a problem with the inspection report, you can say there are some issues highlighted in the inspection report that we need to address. I usually try to avoid using a negative word if at all possible anyways. Number 6, fair. Striving for fairness in negotiations is important. However, using the word fair can be an issue because the meaning of fair is subjective. What one person considers to be fair may not be the same as what another person considers to be fair. Furthermore, using fair can make you sound as if you're making an emotional appeal rather than relying on objective facts. And I agree with that. To illustrate this point, instead of saying, I think the price we're offering is fair, say, based on the comparable sales in the area, this is a reasonable offer. Or I might even soften it even more than that, because I've had to do this in the past where you're making a low offer, but I've run the comps and the comps just don't support that, right? So I might even say, well, I completed a market analysis and the buyers feel that this is a reasonable offer. So I add the buyers feel, sort of thing. Next, name calling. And so number 7 is the word cheap. Like the words bottom feeder and lowballer, cheap has negative connotations. More importantly, using these words immediately creates a hurdle in the negotiation. If your buyer submits a very low offer, a better approach is to say, the buyer has decided to write an offer substantially lower than your asking price. About 50% of the time, we can put these transactions together. I would like to request that you give us a counter offer to see if this is part of that 50% that will close. I feel like this is a little wordy. I would probably maybe cut out the 50% or something. Maybe even just keep it short and simple. Something like, we realize this is low. We're just really looking for a counter offer. So just encourage a counter offer or something. Words that weaken your negotiation position. And so there's 3 of these. First is honestly. Using the word honestly implies that you may not have been honest in the past. It also, which is a good thing to remember, right? Like, oh yeah. It also implies that you're about to say something that may not be entirely truthful. For example, if a seller is reluctant to accept an offer that's slightly lower than their asking price, and the agent says, honestly, I think you should take this offer. It's the best one you're going to get. Instead, simply state your opinion or point of view without using the word honestly. And I think this is a good one. Just cut it out. You could say, I just think you should take this offer. It's fair, or it's the best that I think we're going to get. Maybe. Using the word maybe when you're negotiating can make you appear indecisive and unsure of yourself. It can also make the other party uncertain about your intentions or position. For example, instead of saying, maybe we can consider your offer, you can say, let me discuss this with my client and see if we can find a way to make it work. Definitely, I think, much stronger.
Yeah.
And then the last word, sorry. While it's important to apologize when you make a mistake, using the word sorry in a negotiation can make you appear weak and lacking in confidence. Instead, focus on finding a solution to the issue and move forward. This is where the work of Clotaire Raphael, the marketing consultant to many of the Fortune 100 companies, is very useful. When there's a mistake, Americans respond very favorably to those who go about fixing the problem. Consequently, instead of saying you're sorry, be direct and say, I made a mistake. What can I do to fix it? Keeping the negotiation moving forward until both parties agree is crucial to negotiation success. Steering clear of the 10 words we just covered will greatly increase the probability that you will successfully negotiate and then close your deal.
Those are 10 good words to avoid.
Yeah, really good reminders. Any questions or comments about them?
Actually, I try not to say these words anyway.
Yeah, I do too.
General.
But every once in a while, sometimes something will slip out, you know. I think that these are some good reminders, like especially the one about honestly, or sorry. I know, gosh,
Oh,
I
sorry,
probably
I
say
didn't
sorry
fill
a
out the
lot.
garbage. Ooh.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think some good reminders. Okay, I will go ahead and stop.